Hello and welcome to a class for parents of kids with autism. This class is being provided to the community at large as an outreach of the Clermont County Juvenile Community Resource Center, which is a new establishment in our county on the campus of Juvenile Court. And so this class is being made available not only as an educational resource, but also as a discussion group, a resource sharing group, and also as something of a support group for parents who might be interested in wanting to use it as a springboard for developing some peer-to-peer, parent-to-parent supportive relationships outside of class. From now on, I'll simply refer to it as the class. So the class is starting on Tuesday, September 16th, 2025. We'll meet from 9 to 10:30 a.m. and will be held every Tuesday through December 16th, 2025. Then resuming after the holidays on Tuesday, January 13th, at the same time of day, 9 to 10:30, and will then run weekly throughout the year, except for weeks when I, as the facilitator, am out on vacation or out sick. All right, so a couple other things as we get into some of the upfront details. Unfortunately, babysitting is not available at this time. I don't know if it ever will be. It's not a top priority right now. And the reason I say that is because one of the reasons I've scheduled the class from 9 to 10:30 a.m., especially during the school year, is because often any child with autism, if they're in school or in school for only half a day, usually it's in the morning. So my hope is that this time, the time of the class, will free up as many parents as possible to be able to participate, even if online through Microsoft Teams, or even if you can only physically attend for part of that time. For those attending via Microsoft Teams, I will simply be using my own personal cell phone as the main device through which I will be managing, letting people in, managing the chat, taking note of any questions that might be in the chat, etc. As with any virtual group meeting, please keep your microphone on mute. Keep your microphone on mute until and unless you have a question or a comment. We also do now have a physical web page set up through the Clermont County website, and you can see on this slide part of the URL. My image is blocking it out a little bit there, so I'll go ahead and share the rest of it with you. It's https://. You might want to go ahead and type in www and then put /Clermont-County-Juvenile-Community-Resource-Center/. And if you go there, that's where you'll find the permanent Microsoft Teams link. That's also listed here on this slide. Again, it's blocked out because of me. But you can go to the website, the web page there, and find the link. And that is a permanent link, like I said. All right. And so if it is possible that if I get a lot of people coming in person to attend the class, we may need to change locations relatively quickly at any point. So please go to that web page each Monday night to see if there's any location change. And of course, I'll also list there any information if there's a cancellation for any reason. Again, go there every Monday night to check for any location change. I do have a backup location in the works, so we should be good to go if we need to move off campus. All right. Regarding the Microsoft Teams link, again, this is a permanent link that can be used at any time for any class. And you can, if you just download the app on your phone or tablet or computer, that's all you need to do. What I like about Microsoft Teams is there's no time limit. And so once I let you in, I shouldn't have to log you back in from my end. once we get going. As we use the app, all I ask is that folks please be a little bit patient with me, as I'll be multitasking. I'll be teaching, scrolling through slides to find slides that match various topics and questions that are being brought up in the class. And of course, I'll be monitoring the chat and monitoring to let people in. However, to help me, I'm extremely grateful to be able to announce that helping me in this class, when they're able to attend, are two moms who have raised or are still raising their child or children with autism. And so while I'm trying to do the multitasking, I'm expecting that one or both of these awesome ladies will be able to keep the conversation going until I can jump back in myself. If they're not present, it'll slow things down a little bit just because I'll be trying to handle everything, right? So again, please be patient with me. At times, also present will be one of my colleagues who was for years a special education teacher. She is also a fantastic human being, and I'd love for you to get to know her as well. So hopefully she will be able to join us frequently. I will let each of them introduce themselves once we get started. And I do want to remind these ladies, you do not have to share your last names unless you want to. As you can also see here from this slide, my contact information is there. And the work number is my office number. Please know that even though this class is technically sponsored, so to speak, by Juvenile Court, specifically the Resource Center, which is kind of a branch of Juvenile Court, this class is in no way connected to court proceedings, so no one will ever be court ordered to attend this class. The Google Voice number is one that I use on my personal phone for interacting with parents that attend another parenting class that I teach here on campus. So feel free to use that if you need to with any questions or to get clarification about something on the web page. So that is there for you as well, calling or texting. As you can see now, this is a disclaimer. There is a PDF link. There's a link to the PDF of this on the web page, and it is expected that anyone participating in this class will have read through this before you participate, or at least at the beginning of participating, and that any ongoing participation automatically implies that you are in agreement with all of the statements in the disclaimer. So please do that at your the soonest opportunity. There are some important thoughts here, especially in regard to the fact that the curriculum is a work in progress. And of course, I'm doing my best to make sure all the information is accurate. But it's possible that I can make mistakes, or I simply might not know something that needs to be put into the curriculum that would help clarify something that's already in the curriculum. So all those kinds of things are discussed here in the disclaimer, as well as other things. So again, it's expected that you've read through that if you are participating in class. All right, similarly, and again, you can follow along if you download the curriculum from the link on the web page. And that way you can follow along with each of these slides. And again, I don't know how to, there might be a way to do it, but I don't know how to move the little camera shot of my talking head there, how to move it out of the way. So it will be important for you to read this independently of this video. But the main point here is just that there's a lot of products and things that are listed throughout the curriculum, especially in the resources section, of products that I have not personally tested. I cannot actually really vouch for these products per se. I've done my best to try to find products that look like they could be helpful, but it'll be up to you to research any products or services that are in the curriculum. Again, just the fact that they're in the curriculum does not automatically mean that they are vetted or even recommended, or that I am personally saying that that I know that these are really, really good. And it certainly does not present any notion that all these things come without any risk. You know, every type of treatment, every product, every service, there's always some risk involved, no matter which angle you take. So keep that in mind as we move forward. My goal is to make parents aware of resources. Again, also to do my best to try to not include anything that looks cheesy or hokey or scammy. You know, that's something I try to be very aware of. But again, read through this slide on your own. And, you know, these are just some thoughts about how to handle, you know, reaching out to therapists and people in professional roles to help your child. It really is up to you as the parent to research these people and find out what their training is and ask all the right questions and that kind of stuff. So some basic housekeeping items. My name is Greg Handleton, and I am a licensed mental health therapist, independently licensed mental health therapist in the state of Ohio. And while I have not been providing clinical services for about 7 years now that I've worked for juvenile court, I have been licensed since 1999 and continue to maintain that license through my biannual trainings. I still have certification, active certification in trauma responsive care, and I am currently working on a specific certification for autism. And so I'll talk some more about that here in a little bit. I also maintain a certification for equine assisted mental health practitioner. So I've been trained in how to use horses for in therapy. So that was a lot of fun. All right, so moving forward, again, the juvenile court is our parent organization, but again, there's no the resource center, and especially and including this class, is not linked to any court orders. So that's good news for everyone. And what that means is that everyone coming to the class can remain anonymous. You never have to share your last name. And in fact, those that are joining through Microsoft Teams, it would be good if you would like to remain anonymous. Double check how your name is listed with your avatar picture or your live picture, and you can remove your last name if you would like to remain anonymous. All right, and if you recognize anyone, one of the core principles we'll touch on is confidentiality. So if you recognize anyone in the class, please honor their confidentiality and their anonymity. Don't go home and say, oh, you know, who else was in the class, blah, blah, blah. Keep their presence confidential, just as you would probably like to have your presence remain confidential as well. Again, the purpose of the group is to provide educational support, and we'll talk some more about what that looks like here in a few minutes. We'll also talk about handling conflict because, like I said, this isn't just a class. People are sharing personal information, and they're also reaching out for help. And so we're going to talk about how to handle any conflicts that might pop up. We'll do that here in a few minutes. Again, the PowerPoint curriculum is available through the web page. You can click on the link. It'll pull up a PDF version of the PowerPoint curriculum. It's Microsoft PowerPoint. So that curriculum can be downloaded to your tablet or laptop or computer, and I will update that at least once a month because it is a living document. So what that means is I'm constantly going to be adding slides, new information, and possibly clarifying old slides as we move forward in time. For those attending in person here where the Resource Center is, The ladies' restroom is literally the first door you'll see when you walk out the classroom door. I would like to just say that this is a no judgment zone. Kind of borrowed that from Planet Fitness, of course. I think it's a great little motto we can use as well. This is a place where everyone should feel safe emotionally, verbally. So we're going to talk about that, like I said, here in a few minutes. My goal was to have coffee and snacks. I have to admit that didn't happen for this first class, which is tomorrow. People watching this video 6 months from now, if you end up attending in person, maybe that'll change. But right now, I just didn't get around to it. We will do some initial question and answer time, hopefully today. This introductory material is fairly extensive, so that's why I'm talking fast. If we have time at the end of our time today, we'll do some initial question and answer. But definitely in future classes, that's going to be a huge part of our class time, is taking questions and having discussion about them. All right, again, check the web page for cancellations. All right, again, this is a living curriculum. It just means it's always going to be added to and modified, tweaked, and edited. Again, you have my contact information already. It's also important to note that anyone in my type of role is a mandated reporter, and what that means is if something is shared in class, whether it's in person or online, if it has anything to do with, it creates suspicion or represents evidence of child abuse or neglect or elder abuse or neglect, those things are reportable, and I would be mandated to report those things. Now, the fact that class is anonymous might mean that I wouldn't be able to report something because I might not know someone's last name, right? But if I should happen to find out somehow a person's last name, then I would be obligated to make that report. All right. Topics to be covered. There's quite a few topics that are part of the curriculum at this time. Each of these headings represents a major chapter in the curriculum. So right now we are in the introductory topics. Parent self-care. So these are some slides where we'll cover just some ways that you can take care of yourself emotionally. Diagnostic criteria of autism. We're going to have the opportunity to dive much more deeply into that together. Some of you are already experts on this yourselves. Others have just been dealing with autism and you haven't really had the time or energy to actually kind of get a full picture of what the diagnostic criteria are. So I'll just say right here that one of the challenges of having an open class where people can come at any time is that we may have covered some topics that we've already covered for the sake of new people coming in. Although this video would prevent us from having to cover all these introductory slides every single class, so that's why the video is so important. But it's possible that in week 10 we might have to go back through some material that we covered before for the sake of some new people who are coming in and asking similar questions. So please be patient with that. And so there's just going to be a lot of patience, I think, as we work together, because everyone has needs and everyone has needs that are different. They're at different places on the continuum, and it's just really going to be a challenge, but a welcome challenge to be able to juggle all that and try to meet as many needs as possible week by week. All right. Chapter 4 is called More Basic Facts Regarding Autism and Ways that Autism is Misunderstood. How parenting autistic kids is like parenting neurotypical kids. Neurotypical is the word that we use to just say normal kids. In other words, kids without autism. But I like the word neurotypical because autism is definitely representative of some differences in terms of neurobiological brain chemistry and brain structure. So we'll cover that as well. Oh, I can see my numbers are off there somehow. Not sure how that happened. Section 5 is the one we just mentioned. Section 6 is autistic kids and the juvenile justice system. We may or may not spend a lot of time there depending on what people want to know. The next section is success stories. I like to take time to present some success stories because that's important for parents to hear. Things are not hopeless, and there are successful autistic adults out there in the world. They may not be making millions of dollars, but they're successful in the sense that they are functioning, they're holding down a job. They may have a lot of supports, but they're living life in a way that's meaningful for them. They're not just stuck in a basement somewhere playing video games all the time. They're out there living life. All right. The next section is the intersection of autism and trauma, and that section is kind of in progress right now. I don't have as much material as I would like for that section, but there is some material there that we can cover at this time, right at the beginning. The next section is, are autistic individuals more prone to violence? Again, kind of depends how much time we need to spend there. Depends on questions being asked. But there is some pretty good information there. I think that also will be helpful. The next section is understanding the brain-gut connection in autism. Very, very interesting. We're going to spend quite a bit of time there, actually. The next one is, now let's talk about your child's ICANN network. And so just talking about how to build a network that is supportive of your child. The next one is identifying and capitalizing on an autistic person's strengths and interests. Very, very important section there. The next section is assessments, more treatments / interventions. And then there's also some things in that gut health section. The reason we have a section on gut health, as weird as that may sound, is because research has shown that there is a strong connection between the absence of healthy probiotics in a person's gut and the presence of autistic symptoms. So we'll talk, like I said, we'll talk about that at length. The next section is, can autism be cured? Oh, there's another problem with my numbers. Can autism be cured, healed, or be made less severe? So a lot of good stuff there as well. And then additional resources, and that'll be websites, products, books, and that kind of stuff. The text box here, of course, new topics under development now and or in the future. So one of them is the intersection of autism with modern electronics and social media. I haven't even added that to the curriculum yet, so that definitely needs to be added. And then working towards independent or semi-independent living and the reality of interdependence. It's kind of a long name there, but we want to talk about what is the goal, and we can do that with other sections as well. Is the goal for any human being to be fully independent? Probably not, so we need to talk about what would be different than full independence. So full independence would be, I made my own shirt, I hunted my own food, I do everything for myself, but nobody does that. So we have to talk about how to be interdependent with others in a successful way. All right, so most of the content of this class comes directly from PowerPoint slides and lectures that are part of the PESI.com Autism Certification Training for Therapists, which is, again, my headshot here is covering some of that information. But again, it's not covered in the PDF that you can find online. All of this material is copywritten. However, I have received written permission from PESI.com to provide this information to you as long as it is free of charge, which it is, and as long as I reference the sources of all information being provided, which I am doing. As you will see citations in all of the slides that come from this training. You'll see who the presenter was in the training, and their name and who they are. I.e., you will notice that each slide or cluster of slides are all referenced back to the PESI seminar speaker by name and according to the title of their PESI seminar presentation / lecture. Okay. So as you can see, they told me that as long as none of it is for profit, you would be able to share the materials as long as properly cited. So that's what I just shared with you. Note, this response from PESI.com tells me that all of the workshops comprising this certification training are owned by them, and therefore I do not and did not have to seek separate permission or permissions from the individual presenters in order to make this information available to you without cost. So that's the basic principle that I'm operating on here. As you can see, this training was recorded, the PESI training was recorded in 2022. It was an autism symposium, and that's where I'm getting not all, but there's a lot of slides in the training that are coming from that PESI training. Note, any slide that is not referenced to a speaker from PESI.com's 2022 Autism Symposium is a slide that has been developed by Greg Hamilton, that's myself, either with original content or with content that is referenced to a non-2022 Autism Symposium source. Some of Mr. Hamilton's comments will also appear inside of slides that are being referenced back to other speakers from that PESI training. Also, because this is a living document, please note that some slides are presented might be incomplete. So I might have a slide that's just a heading title, but I haven't added anything to it yet. So there's a few slides like that. Right off the bat, I wanted to go ahead and share this resource since it's always going to be super helpful to parents whenever they can listen to autistic adults who have extremely valuable perspectives, ideas, comments, and resources to share with the world. Most autistic adults who are able to share with others are often also willing to share their story, their insights in order to help others, other struggling families. So the podcast is available through uniquelyhuman.com, and I would highly recommend that when you're driving in your car and that kind of stuff, that you maybe take a listen to some of these folks talking about different aspects of autism. I'm going to keep listening as well, and I'm sure some things will end up in the curriculum over time. Sorry about that. I was looking at some notes there. So as we continue on, I just want to pause with this particular slide. This was this information on the left side of the slide comes from a video by Tom Galperin, founder of Galperin Autism Consulting LLC here in the Cincinnati area. And the video, you can see the video link in the upper left there, or I should say the web address for the video, so feel free to watch the video at length. But I just took this one little bit of information, which is really just my way of saying that my heart goes out to you. As I've gotten into this material and the training more and more, my heart truly breaks for those who are in crisis because of autism and dealing with autism in the daily struggles that go along with it. And so Tom just listed some key areas here, and obviously there's huge impacts sometimes in raising autistic children where the parent feels like their own social life, parent and or family members, other family members, feel like their social life has been impacted negatively, even to the point of not having one anymore. They feel like they can't go out, be with friends. Even siblings often feel like their social connections have been damaged or even destroyed because of their sibling who has autism. Not being able to go out, be with friends, or feeling shunned. You know, sometimes for adults, friends might not have anything against you, but maybe they've just distanced themselves simply because they don't know anything about autism. They might feel awkward, might not know what to say, how to help. All those kinds of things cause people sometimes to remove themselves from the social circle of a parent who's dealing with autism. Obviously, autism can greatly impact employment. Many parents have lost one or more jobs as a result of all the appointments and crises and emergencies that pop up because of their child's autism. And even their current job could be at risk. Maybe they've had to go down to part-time, maybe, those kinds of things, where now that ties into the financial side of things. Finances are often in crisis because of everything involved with autism, paying out of pocket, trying to meet deductibles, just other resources that you have to pay for, or you're trying to get your kid into a summer camp that's designed for autism, all that kind of stuff. It costs money, and I admit that, again, a lot of the resources that are going to be made available through this curriculum do cost money. There's just no way around it. But also know that some of the resources are available for free, especially online resources through websites where, whether it's a therapist or an organization, they are trying to make certain resources available for free because they know that the finances are often at a crisis level for parents that are raising an autistic child. And then, of course, there's the exhaustion, mental, emotional, physical, even spiritual exhaustion that kind of goes hand in hand often with raising an autistic child. So what is it really like to be the parent or custodial grandparent of an autistic child? Even quote-unquote mild autism and or ADHD present challenges for caregivers that can often drain them so much that they themselves begin to struggle with symptoms of depression. They may begin to use certain substances because they're looking for relief from the stress. They may begin to default to just being angry and irritable most of the time because of just how discouraged they feel, and not just discouraged, but also feeling ignorant, like they don't know what else to do, and that's day after day after day. So that really weighs on a parent. It's in the face of relentless problems that they feel these things, problems that don't seem to have a solution, or certainly don't seem to have a readily accessible solution. The cry, "I've tried everything," is often heard, and for many it does feel like they've tried everything under the sun for their child, from medication to therapy to special camps and home-based interventions, etc. So hopefully this class will provide you with one more puzzle piece, at least one more puzzle piece that will help you to get back on track, or even to get on track for the first time, and that more puzzle pieces can fall into place as a result of getting the first one put in place. And so, for example, a lot of parents have been instructed through their doctor, their child's pediatrician, to get into a certain type of therapy, and maybe they've tried that therapy, tried it for years. It hasn't necessarily been super productive, and so hopefully this class will show you that, hey, there's some other treatments available, that kind of stuff. So again, my heart goes out to you. I truly really hope that that this class will be meaningful for you. I don't want it to be a waste of your time. Although, like I said, there'll be times where it may feel a little bit slow because there's so much information to cover out there, and it might not all pertain to your situation. Unfortunately, autism is a huge and vast area of study, because there's just, for every autistic person, there's some new, different, unique challenges. Everyone's different. Because this class is also something of a support group for parents, we need to take a moment to establish some reasonable expectations for our time together. The first thing is that everyone should be able to feel emotionally and physically safe and respected at all times. No one is going to be asked to share personal information that goes deeper than surface level disclosures. If you want, you can sit in this class, listen, take notes, but never say a word if you don't want to. Therefore, no one should feel pressured to share anything that they're not comfortable sharing. Confidentiality, of course, is probably most people's biggest concern. At one time, my family and I lived, when I was providing therapy, we lived in a small town, and I tried to start some small groups through a church that we were involved with, and we couldn't get anyone to attend. And I think the reason nobody wanted to attend is because of their fear that confidentiality would be broken there in the small town, right? In that small town environment. So confidentiality is a huge concern for just about everyone. Trust between members is the foundation of group success. To develop trust, people must feel sure of confidentiality being honored. Confidentiality is defined as what's said in group stays in group, unless abuse or neglect needs to be reported, which is something we talked about earlier. Again, as a result of a particular disclosure. Let's consider the level of confidentiality this group would like to adhere to. Now, since you're watching this video, what that means is you're not present for this discussion with the people who were present on the first day of class. And since it's an open group, we have to decide what to do with confidentiality pretty much across the board. So I did borrow this little white boxed text from another class that I teach here, which is called the Parent Project, Changing Destructive Adolescent Behavior. And as you can see, it says working with a group. As a group, take a minute to read aloud these questions regarding confidentiality. So 1 through 4, there's some important questions that group members would discuss in order to figure out what level of confidentiality that they all want. So the first one, can group members talk to each other outside of the group regarding something heard in the group? So can 2 group members, if they run into each other at the grocery store, openly talk about something that another group member shared while they're out in public? Number 2, can shared material be discussed outside the group if the member's name is not used? So in the first one, the implication is, 2 group members run into each other at the grocery store, and they're like, hey, how's it going? Hey, what did you think about what Mary had to say? Number 2 is saying, can they talk to each other, but instead of using Mary's name, they can just say, hey, remember when that one lady shared about this, that, and the other? What did you think about that? So that's number 2. Number 3, can information be shared with spouses or roommates or other people living in the home, basically? And then number 4, should the member speaking need to ask for confidentiality in each specific case, meaning during class time, again, it's kind of like a support group. Do they always have to ask, like, hey guys, I'm getting ready to say something important, please keep it confidential? Or is it just implied that everything that is said in class is automatically confidential? All right. So the little the text that's circled with the rainbow colors there with the yellow highlights inside, it's just saying that as a result of that conversation, the group should go with the most strict definition that any one member of the group would like to see happen. So if one group member says, you know what, I don't care, you can use my name, I don't care if you're at Kroger or at the doctor's office, I don't care where you are, I don't care. Just, if I said something in group, you can say it anywhere you want. You can go home and tell people anything I've said, I don't care. But then another group member might be like, I want the total opposite. I don't want anyone discussing anything I've said outside of group. And so the group would have to go with that definition. It's the most restrictive definition, but it is the one that you need to go with based on the fact that one group member needs that level of confidentiality in order to feel safe, right? Now, what I'll say to you is that's the level that we should agree to anyway. But I think what makes sense is if you're at home, you can share something you learned from class. Just don't use any names. And if there's anything that would be identifying, don't use any of that kind of information. There's no need to say, oh, this one lady in group, I think she works at the BMV, said this. Well, you didn't share her name, but you shared where she works, and there's no need for that. There's no need to share that information. You could share with your spouse or partner or someone else, with a friend, hey, here's something I heard, here's something I learned, but you sanitize it in terms of confidentiality. You remove the person's name, even you might not even know the person's name. You don't say what they looked like. You don't say what they sounded like. Oh, this lady with a New York accent said this. Don't share any of that identifying information. But you may share factual information. Like this one lady in class said she took her autistic child, to see this one therapist in Milford, and it was really helpful, and here's what they said about that therapist. All right, that's fine. You can share that kind of stuff. But just keep it sanitized, I guess is the word I like to use. Don't throw in any identifying information at all. So if everyone can agree to that, that will keep things safe, and no one will feel like their personal information is being put out there. Now, again, be careful, because if a parent in class says, my autistic child also has their right leg was basically defective at birth, well, that's very identifying. So you might not share their name, you might not share anything else, but if you say, oh, and their child's dealing with a lot of stuff, not just autism, but their child's also dealing with the crippled right leg, now you've just identified that family. So again, avoid all those specific kind of identifiers in order to maintain confidentiality. All right. So during group, we're going to talk a little bit about just some guidelines for how to have group. All right. And these two texts that are these white boxes, also I've borrowed those from the Parent Project. And by the way, I have to say the Parent Project is a class that is geared for parents of neurotypical kids, although many of the parents that end up in that class, have a child with ADHD or major depression, bipolar, all kinds of other things, but definitely not autism. That curriculum is not geared to help parents with a child with autism. But I want to brag about that class. I've been teaching it for 11 years now, twice a year for 11 years. And it's really excellent. So if you have struggles around just raising your neurotypical kids, maybe they have other challenges. Like I said, it could be mental health challenges. Maybe they've had trauma. Maybe there's been a divorce and things that they're wrestling with. It could be grief issues. That curriculum is still going to help you parent your neurotypical child, even if they're dealing with all those kinds of issues or some of them. I will probably list that class information on the web page that this autism class information is on. And the next class, I'm just starting the fall class. So the next one will be in the spring of 2026. Feel free to check the web page for information about that class. You can attend it even without being court ordered. So it's really good stuff, and a lot of people have really gotten a lot out of it. So in our class, this is a little bit of an example I like to share. It says, sounds like this. Well, what does active listening or advice giving sound like? What should it sound like? So facilitator says, gee, Mike, it sounds like you had a rough week. Did you just want to vent tonight, or did you want to hear any advice the group may have to offer? And so Mike says, I just wanted to vent, and maybe that's what he does for a few minutes. But then, he might go on to say, you know what, I would like any advice that I can get. I really need help with me and my son, me and my daughter, or whatever. I would like advice. So the facilitator would then say, once Mike makes it known that he's open to advice, the facilitator would say something like, before anyone says anything, tell us, Mike, what concrete steps have you already taken? What have you already tried? And that way, people aren't offering advice that, feels a little bit, maybe insulting is too strong of a word, but, the parent who's asking for advice, they're sitting there thinking, oh, I've already tried that. I've already tried that. All right, can we move on? Can we move on? And then, but the parent who's giving advice doesn't know that, so they're just kind of taking however much time they're taking to share advice that maybe misses the mark because nobody bothered to ask, hey, what have you tried already? So we want to do that in our class. We want to, before anybody jumps in with advice, we all need to take time to listen actively and to find out, at a minimum, at least find out what are some things that this parent has already tried. And then we can tentatively offer some advice, okay? That little gray box in the middle says, remember, classrooms / support groups are not social media platforms. Here we need to actually use social skills with one another. I'm really concerned. I think if I have one big concern, it's that most adults today have been trained by social media to be reactive and to say whatever they want without considering the other person. So if anyone attending this class can honestly raise their hand and say, yeah, I guess I've been trained that way too. Even some older people who grew up maybe in a world where communication and social skills were more used, even older people have been trained by social media. It's almost like the loss of these important skills has taken place. So we want to do everything in our power. I'm going to also gently remind people, hey, hold on a second. Please ask this first, or, I'm going to do my best to prompt people to use some of these vital social skills so that everyone feels emotionally respected and feels safe and feels like they're really being heard, and that people aren't just reacting to them or, sharing advice without any thought. A few more rules also comes from the parent project, so I just borrowed those as well. And basically, if anyone asks you a question directly, you have a right to pass. You never have to say anything you're not comfortable saying. You can always say, I'm just going to sit and listen today. Time limits, I don't set time limits on people, but think about this type of class, this type of support group type of environment. Everybody has a story, and everyone has a story that has gone on for years and years, usually, dealing with autism. So everyone participating, please keep this in mind, that it's really vital that everyone, when you're sharing some of your story, some of your struggle, there's no way that that everyone listening is going to be able to absorb and process your entire story. You're like all the details all in one clump. I mean? It's a challenge. It is a challenge because sometimes we start telling our story and it's like, well, there's this, and then there's this, and then there's this, and then there's this. It is very challenging, but let's do our best. And if I ever hold up, sorry, trying to get the old timeout signal, I'm doing it respectfully. All I'm trying to do is, that's maybe my way of communicating gently that, hey, there's a lot of information that just got shared. Can we pause right here, process a little bit, and I don't know if we'll get back to the rest of what you want to say. Again, we have to be mindful that everybody, pretty much everybody's going to have questions or comments. We need to make time for each other. So just time limits is going to be probably the biggest challenge, I think, especially anytime the class gets bigger. All right, democracy, so we can vote on things, or maybe things we would vote on as a class, and we'll deal with those things as they come up, especially in terms of group process, or if we decide to try to do some event or something, we would have kind of a democratic approach with that. And then active listening, we've kind of touched on it already, but active listening means asking questions about what we've just heard. So that's why we want to keep things relatively short so that other people can say, all right, hey, is this what you're saying? We need to take time to do that because we want to understand. We don't want to just jump in with opinions. We want to make sure we're understanding things that are being shared. All right. So the word of caution is that because this topic hits people right where they live every day, and because each participant has most likely experienced intense emotions throughout their autism journey with their child or children, it is vital that when offering input to other parents, that the person offering input or advice be sure to not be coming across as trying to quote unquote get or force the other person to see things a certain way or do things a certain way. So we want to be very careful. You may have had great success with something with your child, and it's easy to think, oh, well, surely this will help everyone. You know, some people have less forceful personalities than others. Some have more forceful personalities than others. The more forceful ones probably will need to work harder at this, which is try not to come across as trying to force anything on anyone else, right? So just, again, the best way to, I'll just keep reading here, the best way to avoid this pitfall is to use I statements. You know, here's what I've tried, here's what I've done, here's why I think it helped or even partially helped or what seemed to be good about it. And that's different than saying, hey, you need to try this, you need to do this, right? So use I statements regarding the things that you've done, the things you've tried and have had success with. If one of the goals of this group is to foster supportive relationships, then remember, feeling supported begins with how people talk to each other. It begins with how people interact with one another. So again, we want to be gentle. We want to be humble. We want to be tentative. You know, hey, here's an idea. What do you think about this? That's so much better than coming across as having all the answers or telling other people what they should do. Also remember that if people do form supportive relationships outside of class, there is no obligation to continue those connections forever. People are always free to pause or end any such connections without having to give a reason and without expecting to experience retribution through social media, and without having to feel afraid on any level to return to class. In other words, everyone participating should expect to be able to always feel emotionally and physically, of course, feel safe, respected, and valued. And let's remember, we ourselves are most likely guilty of having ended certain relationships in our own lives in a less than ideal manner, too. Our very human tendency is to always try to come across as holding the higher moral ground, when in reality, we have also messed up in the past as well. So, the non-retribution rule applies every bit as much to social media as it does to in-person meetings. So in other words, if you form some connections with other group members, let's say you even start developing somewhat of a friendship with them, but something comes up and you just disconnect. You just decide, you know what, I'm not going to continue with that relationship, but I would like to continue to go to class. You may have inadvertently hurt the feelings of that other class member, that other person that you connected with, because maybe they've reached out and then you're ignoring them. You're just not reconnecting with them. You're choosing to distance yourself. You haven't provided any explanation. They perhaps want an explanation, but they're just not getting it. Well, it's important that if you are one of the people who ends up, again, this is a possibility. You know, I hope this never happens, but it is a possibility that if you end up getting your feelings hurt, what I'm asking of you is that you take a deep breath and you let it go. That this is not a place or a time for slandering anyone, trying to make anyone look bad, trying to smear their reputation, trying to make them, you know, turn them into some kind of world-eating monster, you know. You just got to let it go. And just, I want everyone to be able to come back and still participate and still get something out of class without bad vibes, without there being tension or anger. Because the fact is, everyone has the freedom to decide to what degree, if at all, they want to continue with a particular relationship. I really believe a lot of good, supportive relationships are going to come about as a result of this class. But again, there's the possibility things could leave a sour taste in someone's mouth, and they have to deal with it the best way they know how. If that's you, if you're the one who feels like you need to disconnect, I just ask that you handle it in a mature manner. You also should not be slandering anyone or, gossiping or saying things about the person that you're disconnecting from, no matter what they may have done to offend you or make you feel like you want to pull away. All right. So I hope that makes sense. These are kind of the nitty-gritty details of human relationships. So I wanted to make sure to share some thoughts about this kind of thing right at the beginning. This next slide is an example of that. This just comes from my own personal life. Has to do with how I reconnected briefly with my best friend from the time I was 6 to 8, almost age 12. Things didn't go well, and I was the one disconnecting, and then I just share some thoughts about how he handled it and then how I handled it. So I just share this as an example of what I just talked about. We're going to skip through that for now, but you can read it on your own. Giving feedback and or advice, so let's kind of circle back around to this for a moment. Everyone knows how it feels when someone has given them unwanted advice. So for the good of everyone, let's look at some more guidelines real quick. In the last slide, or a couple slides ago, the facilitator asked Mike what concrete steps he had taken before opening the floor for other group members to provide feedback or advice. This is important so that everyone is listening to what he has already tried before jumping in. All right. So all feedback/advice should be given on the basis of the following principles. The first thing is, does the person even want any feedback? Do they even want any advice? Are they ready and willing to hear and receive feedback from other people? Sometimes they may only want feedback from the class facilitator or one specific person. That's okay. And you may find yourself feeling that way at times. You're free to say that. Hey, I'd like some advice, but I just want to hear it from Greg right now, and that's okay, right? If you're not sure, go ahead and gently ask. In other words, if you're not sure about whether you should share advice, go ahead and ask. Say, hey, are you feeling like you would like some input right now? Obviously, if a group member asks, what should I do? And then waits for a response and seems to be listening, then yes, they are willing to hear and receive feedback and some input, some advice. But if they ask this question and then respond to feedback with, yeah, but, if you know how that is, they said they're open, but then maybe their response shows that, maybe they're not as open as they even thought they were. Sometimes we think we are, and then we're like, I'm kind of getting defensive right now. Just pick up on that and just know that, all right, that maybe they're not as open as they thought. It could be that they just need some time. They said they wanted advice, but their response shows that they're still not really ready. That's okay. All right, and then the second one is what you are going to say factual and appropriate to the facts that have already been shared? Before giving advice, be sure you've truly listened to all of the relevant facts. Also, are you getting ready to share factual information, or is it information that's more your opinion? Maybe it's something that kind of represents some wishful thinking on your part. Maybe it's a creative idea that you have. So that's different than sharing factual information. Now, again, no one can argue with you if you share facts from your own experience, right? Using those I statements. I tried this with my child and it worked wonders. Nobody can argue with that, right? But if you take that and try to tweak it and share it as advice to someone else, it might get a little muddy. Like, is that really something that you're sharing that's based in fact, or is it more just kind of your imagination, or is it just something you are thinking out loud about, right? So try to be clear in regard to information you're sharing with other group members, right? Tied in with that is the next point. Have you used the same advice successfully? So have you actually, as we say, practiced what you're preaching? So again, it's just kind of the same idea. Is your advice something you yourself have actually tried and been successful with, or practiced and learned as part of this course even? So you might try something from this class and then you come back and have some feedback to share with others, which, by the way, is one of the things I really look forward to. And I think it'll benefit everyone. Again, the key is to share it humbly and respectfully and just sort of tentatively, like, hey, we've had 2 weeks working with this particular therapist or this type of therapy. It looks like it's really good. That's different than coming in and saying, here's the answer to everyone's problems. You know what I mean? All right. And then the last one, are you being kind, empathetic, and supportive in how you're sharing? Again, this is worth repeating. Does your advice show a strong understanding of, respect for, and compassion for the other group members' struggle, feelings, and problems? Remember, most problems are not fixed with just one step, one ingredient, or one intervention. Most things take time, so we need to think long-term in terms of how we give advice to others. One of my favorite quotes in the world is from Stephen Covey, author of The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Most people do not listen with the intent to understand, they listen with the intent to reply. So our goal is to listen to each other with the intent to understand what the other person is really saying before we respond. And let's be honest, when it comes to parenting, most parents automatically default to some less than desirable communication habits. Think about when you were a child, some of the things you didn't like about how your parent or parents talk to you. And these are just some of the things we tend to do, right? We tend to give orders without listening. We tell our kids what to do because we're the boss, right? But we're not listening to them. We're not trying to understand them necessarily. We often assume that we already know our child and we don't need to learn anything new, right? And so we learn everything we know about them by the time they're 5 years old, and they're 10 years old and we're still operating from that old knowledge, not realizing there's some things that have changed. Sometimes we tell kids what they think. We tell kids what they feel. That's a big one, again, based on the fact we think we know them perfectly, right? But the child experiences that as disrespect. They experience it as, you don't know how I feel. You don't know what I'm really thinking. So then they start to pull away and they just start kind of making up their own rules because they realize if my mom or dad or step-parent is going to just tell me how I think, well, I'm going to do things my own way because they're wrong, right? And then we often expect compliance. We ask kids and expect kids to do things and perform certain skills without actually, taking time up front to make sure they've acquired the skill that we're expecting. I mean, this can be as simple as go pick up your room. Well, when I was very little, the first time my mom ever said, "You're grounded," I started crying because I thought she meant she was going to bury me in the ground. Right? When you say go pick up your room, some kids, especially very visual learners, they have this picture in their head of them trying to pick up their room, physically pick up their room, and they can't really figure that out, so then they don't even try. They don't even know what it means. You know what I mean? So we have to make sure kids actually have the skills to do the things we expect of them. All right. This next is a image from this video, Lessons from a Late in Life Autism Discovery by Patrick Casale, C-A-S-A-L-E. And that was a TEDx talk from Manitos Springs. And so I just wanted to put this in here. It's a great video to watch at any time. I wanted to just note here in that bottom text box that I personally have a friend who didn't discover he was autistic until he was 60 years old. Back in the early days of our friendship, I literally remember wondering why Jerry, that's a fake name, but why Jerry was so pushy, why he couldn't seem to, quote unquote, take a hint, and didn't know when to stop telling you what you should do, and didn't even know that he didn't understand body language and tone of voice. Now I know why, right? He was on the autism spectrum. And he's also a millionaire, by the way. So he's done very well in life, but he lacked these social skills, right? From Patrick Casale, he mentions in his video that one study showed that 41% of people who died by suicide in England were autistic or had autistic traits. Now that's a very sobering statistic, but the next statement here by Dr. Megan Neff, and this is what she has to say about autism. The soul yearns for connection, but the autistic body, physical body of an autistic person, yearns for isolation, meaning a lot of autistic people have sensory sensitivities. That's something that's neurological, and that's just a way of saying that in their physical body, they tend to want to withdraw from people because their body is saying it's too much, I get overstimulated. But yet in their soul, they still want connection with people. And so Patrick Casale says about that quote from Dr. Neff, he says, "No truer words about my autistic experience have ever been spoken." And so I thought this was a good thing to share up front because, you know, part of the reason anyone gets depressed and becomes suicidal ultimately is because they feel alone. They feel rejected. They feel like they're not good enough. They feel misunderstood, all those things, right? So we want to understand right off the bat that with autism, those struggles can be magnified, right? And so we want to do everything we can as parents and as adults to try to make sure that autistic kids feel valuable, feel valued, feel loved, feel understood in their unique experience of their autism, right? So all those things are important. The next slides, a couple slides, are how this class will work. Obviously, we'll be going through the PowerPoint curriculum, sometimes slide by slide, depending on the topic. I, as your facilitator, will take questions from participants, and then I'll be working to not just respond automatically, you know, verbally, but I'll be working to find slides in the curriculum that pertain to your question or to your comments, right? So that'll take some effort to hunt down those slides and bring them to bear. I, as your facilitator, will do my best to get answers to questions as soon as possible. If I'm unable to provide sufficient information that's found in the curriculum at any given moment. So I may need to do some research myself and find answers that I can then bring to class the next time. So parents may come physically drive here to the Resource Center, and that address was on the first slide. And you may come here anytime during regular business hours, except for Monday holidays, because we do observe Monday, the bank holidays, right? And other standard holidays. You may come and read any of the resources that are available and take notes. So you're free to come here and use it like a library. I have several resources right now. Sorry, got the itchy nose going on. Several resources available right now, and they're available anytime you want to come by during the day and just sit down with a notepad and take some notes You can always use your phone camera if you'd like, obviously. All right. Like I said, I have a couple ladies right now that are going to be serving as what I call parent peer support partners, and they will do their best. So they're going to be present hopefully most of the time. They're going to do their best to answer questions as well from their own experience and from their own wisdom and knowledge, right? Again, just like the curriculum, some things are just a work in progress. Everyone is in the process of learning. So take their feedback seriously, but take it with a grain of salt as well, just because, again, it's just information that you can then explore further. And that's really the next point. Parents may do their own research, whether through books, articles, or online, and then share the results of that research with the class. And I say in a non-directive manner. Again, we're not trying to shove anything down anyone's throat, but we're just openly sharing things that we've learned, things that we find to be helpful. Because this is an open class, again, sometimes you may find that some information gets repeated for the benefit of newcomers. Parents are free to share phone numbers with one another in order to provide information and or relational and or emotional support to one another outside of class. Also, I am no one's boss, but I am the class facilitator. If at any point I feel that someone is speaking in a way that is harmful to the group or any individual in the group, I will first ask that person to please take a break, take a time out. If they choose not to, I will have to ask them to leave. I also reserve the right to change the course of a conversation at any time. Again, if I think that something is not being productive or helpful to the group, or maybe it's something that's just a matter of opinion, where things are just kind of devolving into, arguments about opinions, those kinds of things, then I will reserve the right, I do reserve the right to say, all right, time out, we're going to shift direction now. I'll use the metaphor of a ship. If a ship is heading into a storm, a good captain will take action to move the ship away from danger. So that's kind of the idea there. If we're reading through a slide, let's try to do our best to read through all of the information on that slide, saving comments and questions for the end. The reason for this suggestion is because sometimes certain questions will be answered later in the same material. So sometimes we start asking questions or things that are going to get addressed here in a moment because that information is literally farther down in the same slide or the next slide. So we want to get through all the relevant material before jumping in with questions and comments. The best way to approach this class and your entire life journey, of course, in dealing with autism is with joy, curiosity, love, teachability, and with grit, of course, right? Everyone needs some grit to work through problems and get through them. And the idea that progress is achieved in a way similar to when building a puzzle, one piece at a time. So we've talked about that. Here's the peer-to-peer parent support partners, right? Like I said, I'm very fortunate to have a couple moms right now who are helping out in this area. The one mom is a lady I've had intermittent contact with over the past few years. And so that intermittent contact has allowed me to see that she is a proactive mother who loves her child with all her heart. She has sacrificed herself for the sake of her children, and she has fought for him and for her other child and other children with developmental challenges with every ounce of her energy at her disposal. In short, I have the honor to know her as a person of character. Her willingness to help other parents is sincere, and I trust she'll be honest about what her limitations are as she does work. And, she does work a job and has a home life. So her limitations are that she might not be available 24/7, right, to provide support for you. So I trust her to set those boundaries and let you know what her limitations are, right? The second mom I've invited is a lady who came highly, highly recommended to me by a couple with whom my wife and I have been close to for the past 20 years. And I'm already feeling very blessed to know her as well. If you would like to help out as a peer-to-peer parent support partner, especially as this group grows and especially as these two moms are not going to be able to be available all the time and certainly won't be able to come to every class. Please let me know and we can talk. It's okay if someone who helps out in this capacity can only do so during class or maybe right after class, right? You might not be available, after hours, so to speak, or on the weekends. But again, those details can be worked out case by case. Some parents who can help out in this manner and in this role, they may be open to taking text messages or phone calls 24/7. I don't know. We'll see how that goes. All right. The main thing is I'm looking for people who are full of kindness and thoughtfulness towards others. Moms who are, and it could be dads as well, but probably most attendees will be moms. But people who are secure in not having to be right, not having to be right all the time, certainly, not having to be in control, and who are able to be supportive without being pushy or intrusive, right? So there's just some basic qualities that I would be looking for if anyone would like to help out in this kind of role. All right, so this is a slide that has the mobile crisis number here locally in Clermont County. This is a service that's available 24/7, 365. You can call this number and ask for a mobile crisis, and they will send a therapist, and a police officer also will arrive at your home just to make sure that safety isn't an issue for the therapist. And then that therapist will help you with the situation at hand to see see if there's ways to de-escalate maybe a situation with your child. You can certainly educate them on what's going on with your child in regard to just their personality and their behavior and their autism specifically. But this is a very can be a really wonderful service because it's a way to get some help to your house in a crisis or maybe even a developing crisis. And then from there, it may end up, you need to go to the ER, or it could be, that things do get settled and you can come up with a safety plan with the help of the therapist, that kind of stuff. So this is a wonderful resource. I'll let you read through that on your own. Also, just some adolescent psychiatric units that are available in our area, in the Cincinnati, Southwest Ohio area. This does not include anything in or around Dayton. And then Sun Behavioral is in Northern Kentucky. The last time I checked, they do take Ohio Medicaid. So again, I'll let you read through that on your own. This next slide is just a reference to this resource, which is the Ohio's Parent Guide to Autism Spectrum Disorder. This was put together by parents. You can see the different chapters contained in it. I have a physical copy here at the Resource Center if you ever want to look at it. And then there's the website where you can go and download it. I haven't really had time to look through it yet. Looks like it's a great resource for parents. So please get a copy for your own reading. And you can see highlighted in yellow, these parents said, what do you wish you had known the first year your child was diagnosed? So they've really done a good job just taking all of their early questions and trying to get them answered for parents. And then this next slide comes from that same resource. It just shows you a little bit of the process that kids go through in order to get evaluated for autism. But they talk more about that in the PDF. If you're joining us via Microsoft Teams, please know that we fully acknowledge that virtual attendance is not ideal for a number of reasons. For these reasons, your class facilitator will do their best, and that's me right now, do my best to make sure you can hear, or I'll do my best to repeat questions and comments being made in the live classroom. I put here, I'll turn my camera so you can see slides on the TV screen, but I'm not going to do that because now you do have access to the PDF version of the slides through the web page. And of course, I'll do my best to make sure you're included in conversations. I might even get up with my phone and walk over to someone that you're trying to interact with around a particular question. Please bear with us, as it is certainly a challenge to make sure that virtual parents can also have the best experience possible. So let's wrap up this introductory stuff with some positivity. If you think you can or think you can't, you're right. This is a famous quote from Henry Ford. He's the one that invented the automobile. And as you consider all the challenges he faced in trying to create all the different components for the automobile from scratch without having too much, I mean, I guess he had some precedent. You know, he could look at how locomotive trains were built and things like that. But he had a lot of challenges to face and a lot of problems to overcome. And you can imagine there were times he said, you know what, I can't do this. I can't do this. I can't do it anymore. I'm stuck. I don't know how to deal with this particular engineering problem or whatever. And so how many times could he have given up and been correct? Like, you know what, I can't do this. And he would have been right. But when he stopped and thought to himself, you know what, I can do this. I can get through this. We can get through this. We can figure this out. He was also right. So you got to approach parenting that way. I think this is true of all of us, whether it's autism or with any child. If we look at parenting, just the issue of parenting, and we think, I just can't do it. You're right. But if you say to yourself, I can be the parent my child needs. I can be the parent who learns and who is teachable and who can learn and implement new skills. And I'm not going to stop until I learn everything that I need to learn to help my child. You're also right. Okay. And I also apply this quote to people with autism, children and teenagers and adults. This is true of them too. If they stop and think, you know what, I can't do this anymore. I'm a failure. I can't figure out this social thing or whatever. I can't figure out body language. Like, they could give up and they would be right. You know what, you're right. You can't figure it out. But on the flip side, it's also true. If they say to themselves, I'm going to figure this out. I'm going to figure out how I can cope. I can figure out how to interact with others. I can figure out how to communicate to others how they need to interact with me. They would also be right. So the moral of the story is, don't ever give up. And there's the frog choking the, whatever that is, stork, I guess, pelican or whatever, I don't know. He's just, I ain't giving up. I'm not going down without a fight, you know. And then I like this graphic as well. Again, my headshot here blocks a little bit of it. But the guy on the bottom is literally like an inch away from breaking through that dark rock to get to the lighter colored rock, which I guess is the goal of the mining expedition here. Maybe that's gold on the other side, right? Or some precious ore. And he gave up literally like an inch short of it. He didn't know it because he thought, man, this is just taking forever. He doesn't even know that he's 5 minutes away from his miracle, right? So don't quit 5 minutes before your miracle is an old saying from people that have been in recovery and going to AA and NA and groups like that. So don't give up. Certainly if you start to give up, let's go back to the Henry Ford quote, right? And we're going to try to help you do that, because your child is worth fighting for, and you are worth being supported and being cared for as well. I like this graphic. I just had AI develop this little graphic. In this image, the skier represents the parent of an autistic child. The many trees represent all of the many barriers, challenges, and seemingly insurmountable problems. Our human tendency, of course, is to get so focused on the trees that we, 1, fail to see the gaps between them, and 2, we tend to crash into the trees and get stuck in a place of hopelessness and even despair. But the better way to tackle challenges and problems is to, number 1, focus on them long enough to get a proper understanding of them, while number two, at the same time, looking for options, solutions, partial solutions, baby steps, resources, information we haven't had before, wisdom from others. And that's what the gaps in between the trees represent, right? So we got to ski for the gaps. Acknowledge the trees, find out what the trees are all about, because they represent the challenges and the problems. But ski for the gaps. Try to live in a way where you're constantly, you're not getting stuck on problems, but you're looking for options and solutions. The key is to slow down when you're skiing through a forest, right? So that you don't crash into the trees. And of course, also you want to find those gaps, and that's why we need each other, right? We want to ski around the trees so that they do not stop you in your tracks. All right. This next slide, we're almost done with our intro here. So this is a YouTube channel called Special Books by Special Kids. And what they do is they interview people with all kinds of different disabilities, physical and psychological disabilities. This woman, this is an interview with this woman, and the video is called "An Autistic Woman Who Was Misdiagnosed and Wrongfully Medicated for a Decade." And I would encourage you to read this or listen to this video. And but the whole purpose of this, I think they are a not-for-profit, it's SBSK, is they want to show just how valuable everybody is, right? People with disabilities are just as valuable and important as anybody else, and they're just as worthy of love. And so this is a brief little quote here. This is the question asked by the interviewer. What advice would you give to a parent who has a young child who is showing autism symptoms, but they're wondering, should we get them diagnosed? We don't want them to think they're different. And here's what this woman had to say. I think she's like 30, 31 years old. She says they can't hide the fact that they're different. It's not bad to teach them when it is appropriate to mask their symptoms in public for brief periods of time, because there are situations where it is important to do that. But they need that safe space at home, basically, to be themselves. It's a mindset change. You cannot get rid of a problem by pretending it does not exist. You have to address it. You're only going to do more damage by delaying diagnosis and treatment. They need accommodations for their disabilities. So your autistic child needs accommodations for their disabilities, and they need you. So without the diagnosis, it's hard to get accommodations, I think is her point. So go ahead and get them diagnosed, right? So that's a great little video. I like the interview. Definitely worth watching. And then this is also another video that will encourage you in terms of the problem-solving process. And I may show this the first day of class, possibly, if we have time. We'll see how much time we have left. And I'm noticing that this video is 1 hour and 28 minutes right now, and class is 1 hour and 30 minutes. So interestingly, I just so happen to create enough slides that have enough conversation, enough information that it took up the whole first class. So if you're sitting here thinking, oh my gosh, I can't watch 1 hour and a half video, just know that it's really the same length as class will be. So before we dive into the meat of the material for this class, let's watch an interesting little video about influencing behavior change. The reason this is important is because, well, you'll see. Now, these are neurotypical kids. Keep that in mind. But I think there's some lessons here, and I think you'll see by the end of this. I think it's 6 minutes. It's hard to tell. It's only about 6 minutes long, the video. So I think you'll see why it's relevant. Okay. And then our last slide is just saying, hey, now it's time to take a few minutes to discuss people's thoughts, feelings, ideas, and possible concerns about sharing phone numbers and emails with one another. And by the way, one idea is to get a free Google Voice number on your phone, and that's way you're not giving out your actual personal phone number. Google Voice gives you a layer of anonymity, you know, and you can block people through Google Voice just as you can through your regular phone provider. But that's an idea that you can benefit from. And that way you can communicate safely by not giving your personal cell number to people that you're still getting to know, right? So, very good. I appreciate your kind attention to all this, and I hope this has given you a proper foundation for this class and kind of how to participate and, of course, how to not participate. I think the sky's the limit, and I really look forward to meeting you, whether it's virtually or face-to-face. And let's take care of each other, and we'll help everyone get the most out of this experience. Thank you.